Welcome to a State of the Union Thursday. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on the Matt Murphy Show.
No.
Bell says no.
State of the nursing home.
State. It's a Geritol commercial, Bell. Oh, man. We've got a lot going on. With Super Tuesday in the rear view, we've got the State of the Union from Joe Biden coming tonight. We've got a special treat with President Donald Trump live tweeting or live truth socialing, I think, the State of the Union. I got to be honest, I'm a little, the nihilist in me is very excited about seeing how that turns out. And then after the State of the Union, we've got my friend and Alabama Senator Katie Britt giving the Republican response. I mean, wow. Republicans pick someone to give the response who is eminently reasonable, an excellent communicator, and could not be a better contrast to Joe Biden. We'll just call him Ancient Joe. I've got a treat for you coming out. After Super Tuesday, I wasn't feeling particularly well. I was under the weather this week with the norovirus. I don't know if you've ever had a norovirus, but this is where your body decides to just basically purge everything over a 24-hour period. And it was awful and atrocious. It is apparently going around. And so I'm back to the land of the living. But when I pinned the column, I was very literally down. I was crawling to the toilet. And it was not optimistic. And this one should come out in the Tennessean in the next couple of days. My wonderful editor over there, David Plotzis, he's the one that does the magic and figures out when the things are scheduled. But I will give you a preview. The second sentence says, with Super Tuesday in the rearview mirror, we're left to decide between two elderly gentlemen who can't control what comes out of their mouths for different reasons. And that, my friends, is the true State of the Union. But we do need to talk about what are the different areas of our union that are relevant to the conversation. I want to hear from you guys. That, to me, is what's relevant. That's what makes for a good show. The Members Nutrition Super Text line. Now, this is cool. Like your cell phone, you can call or text from this number, 615-737-9986. I want to hear about the state of your union. How is your family? How are you guys doing? What are the issues that matter to you? Look, I see all the polling data. As a columnist for the Tennessean, as somebody who's regularly on talk radio, enjoying my friend Matt and Chris and the other guys here at Super Talk, we see all this stuff. What we really want to know is the reality that you're facing, because you're the voters. You're the ones that decide this. This isn't about, oh, hey, I read something on X. It's about your life. It's about what are you seeing on your checkbook? How far are your dollars going? Chris did a great job, and listeners did a great job of talking about, well, this immigration stuff, it's not just this parochial Republican issue where like a couple of people are really concerned about it and the rest of the country doesn't care. Right now, everyone cares. But like, how is that impacting you, and how does it drive your decisions? I've got a column coming out probably in the next day or two over on AL.com about abortion. I just don't think that this is the electoral driver that Democrats are hoping for. I think Republicans are going to make it that way. I think Republicans are going to go out of their way to find ways to federalize this issue, make it a national football, and ultimately create more problems than securing the wins that we got under the Dobbs decision. I think it's something that we need to talk about. But I want to address all of these things with you. As always, I want to give a happy shout out to my friends from Nolensville. I'm real excited. I've got, for those who can see on video, my Nolensville Wrestling Club Knights gear on. Love youth sports out in Nolensville. Always willing to discuss youth sports. I think it's an underrated topic. It's where we make our children not weird, get them out of the house, get them doing physical things and not beep, bop, booping on those devices. Get them away from the screens. The screens will kill your children. I want to be very unmistakably clear about that. We're making a nation of junkies. And if you want to talk about ways that China and other countries who don't share our values will topple us quickly, right there. Right there. That's how it happens. It happens very quickly. And a friend of mine, I mentioned her last week when I was filling in, Alex, pointed out some of these. Again, it's a friend that likes to send me troubling articles. She brought up something that I wanted to mention. There's a CBS News article about attention spans. Yes, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about me. And in this study, Gloria Mark, who's a researcher at UC Irvine, she authored Attention Span, a groundbreaking way to restore balance, happiness, and productivity. Here's what she said, and quote, "We started studying attention span length over 20 years ago. We would shadow people with a stopwatch, and every time they shifted attention, we'd click. In 2003, we found that attention spans averaged about 2.5 minutes on any screen before people switched. In the last 5-6 years, they're averaging, any guesses? We've gone from 2.5 minutes to 47 seconds. And that study was done years ago. 47 seconds between in our ability to focus. We just don't have much of an attention span these days. And I think that's related a lot to our culture. Again, I want this show to be your show, 615-737-9986. Come on and join. But let's get right to it. The Super Tuesday recap is pretty basic. We've got incumbent versus incumbent. That's where we are. Let's go through the game plan here, because we're all going to act like we're not real sure. Like, oh, it's a rematch. Everything's kind of the same. No, it isn't. It's not. It's just not. And I think we need to be honest about it on a number of fronts. First of all, a couple of you made the point, and I think that you're right, that all the polling that says we don't want a rematch of Trump v. Biden is basically, if you take a Democratic majority and then add the sort of disaffected Republicans, or you take a Republican majority and add the disaffected Democrats, you get why 70% is saying we don't like the rematch, right? There are a lot of people, in fact, the majority, that like is a strong word, but view their preferred candidate in Trump or Biden as the critical lesser of two evils. And I've heard that a lot from Republicans. I hear it from Democrats. But I want to go through what we're looking at. First, let's take Biden first, because we need to understand what's about to happen. And we need to be sober about it. Joe Biden is about to vanish. How do I know this? Because that was the campaign in 2016. I also know this because Donald Trump got on Truth Social and said, you know what? Let's debate. I'll let the DNC set the terms. Donald Trump and his campaign have figured something out. Drag Joe Biden kicking and screaming out into public, make the campaign about his capacity versus what Joe Biden wants. Joe Biden wants this campaign to be about Donald Trump. A referendum on Trump worked last time. Record turnout. And people say this all the time to me. Why? There's no way Joe Biden got record turnout. And I say to that, correct. He didn't. Donald Trump drove record turnout because Democrats hate, and I mean hate, Donald Trump. So that's what the campaign is going to be about. Just talk to your liberal friends about their support of Biden. So go ask them. First of all, if you don't have liberal friends, you should go get some, because it's good to have a sounding board that doesn't agree with you. I know that's not fun all the time. We like affirmation. but just humor me here. Everybody knows somebody. And just say, hey, why are you supporting Joe Biden? You need to come back to me and tell me how many seconds it takes before they start talking about Trump. Because I promise you it will be a matter of seconds. Oh, they might make it 30 seconds and say, well, Joe Biden is a middle-class hero, loves Amtrak, has, pushed policies that have helped us not have a recession, and some other sort of nominal things. But man, they're going to turn to Trump and they're going to be like, but he's going to eat your babies. That's where they go every time. That is the easy sort of pivot.
I'm a murderer that eats babies.
Right. That's where we're going to go. And I have some very, very progressive, liberal, whatever you want to call them, friends who have consistently come to me and said, well, you understand that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. And I say, well, what do you mean? And this is coming from me. I call balls and strikes when it comes to Trump. I don't like being a political acolyte of any politician. I think it's weird. I love my wife more than anybody. And I don't know, I might agree with her 70% of the time. So the idea that I would agree with any politician more than that seems weird to me. And I'm here in studio staring at a Gadsden flag. And when people tell me, you can't do that, you can't hold that belief, you can't be the way that you are, you know what I do? I'm that way. I hate the idea that in politics right now, everybody seems to be a snowflake. Everybody seems to be, well, you must agree with me or I have to kill you. And so I kind of just say, no, I'm just not. If you're one of these people that says you must agree with me on everything or you're terrible, I don't play with you because I think that's weird. I'll engage you, but I don't capitulate to those arguments. The lesser of two evils arguments just don't move me. But what I've seen here from the Democrats is telling me why Biden is basically the most okayest and Trump is this existential threat. And I'll sort of walk them through this. Okay, well, what's the concern? Well, he's a bad guy. All right, fine. But what's the policy change that will be permanently changed? Well, he's going to take over. Well, while he's president, sure. He will be the president. But you're concerned he's going to stay? Well, he could have stayed in. Did he stay in office? No, but this time he might. Okay. I mean, we see these arguments from ostensibly conservative commentators saying, well, aren't we worried Trump will be a king? I'm not. Because the moment that he's elected and then refuses to leave when his term's over, we're going to have a bigger issue. And a lot of supporters are not going to be like, oh, this seems reasonable. They'll be like, no, this isn't how we do it. And so I always want to point to specific concerns. Do I think Trump runs his mouth all the time and says weird, dumb things that we act like are perfectly fine? Yes. Do I think that's okay? No. Do I think that he's an existential threat that will, remove democracy itself and not allow future elections? No, I don't believe that. That's hyperbole. That it's one thing to oppose a political candidate, but to act like they're necessarily an existential threat. Tell me the specifics. What are you most concerned about?
That's actually Trump level hyperbole.
Right. And this is what I think happens is Trump has diarrhea of the mouth. He just says whatever. And he doesn't do whatever, right? He just says all these things and they cause all kinds of problems, not only for him, but for other Republicans who are then asked to defend these things. It is not a good practice. This is not how we should do it. But in terms of things he did. Well, the border, actually, I kind of, what he did with the border is way better than this Biden guy. So tell me what you're concerned that he will actually do to end democracy. Tell me specifics, not just democracy is under threat. I don't know what you mean. And again, I'm not suggesting this is a good guy, but I am saying that a lot of this stuff is baked into the cake, that people have accepted that Trump is very Trump. And they value authenticity over character. Like, I know that sounds weird, but that's really what we're seeing. They're like, this guy is who he said he was and is consistently that way. You may not like that, and you may think he has low character and all these things, but he's authentic. So the high character fake guys that are putting on a show and we can tell, we don't like. But this guy, we do. And or at least they're willing to ignore some of it. And again, guys, this is coming from me. I don't worship politicians. They come and go. But I think we need to be honest about what's happening on the hills of Super Tuesday. I want to go down the issues on what's happening here very quickly. We've got to take a break, but when we come back, we'll talk about the economy. We'll talk about immigration and explain why Joe Biden doesn't want to talk about any of that. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7. I'm Cameron Smith. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on the Matt Murphy Show. I can see that Bell K behind the board is slipping on his Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber bumpers. I see how it is. I see. We've been talking.
You really want me to go there? We can bust out some Ava Max, do a little Dua Lipa.
Sweet but a Psycho would be great.
Oh, okay.
That's a great political. It captures the moment.
See if I can dig that up there for you, brother.
Quite well. I really appreciate that. So we've been talking a little bit about the dynamics of the election now that we've got our rematch, if you will. And I want to turn to the Members Nutrition Super Text line, 615-737-9986, and make a couple points. First, Jason has managed to already gross me out, and it's not even 1 o'clock, so great work, man. Second, a concern about, hey, when you're honest about the negatives of Trump, you're somehow helping Biden, and therefore you should be always supportive or silent. That doesn't seem like a good idea to me. That's not authentic. One of the reasons Trump is successful is because he's authentic. And so for everybody else to be inauthentic about it and see the truth and not be honest, I think it's a bad idea. It's a bad campaign. The voters that are independent, that are those swing voters that are thinking about, well, what am I going to do between these choices, are going to weigh this stuff honestly. They're going to look at their life and what they care about and try to figure out which candidate is going to be the best for them. The idea that you and I having a conversation about this must only be affirming to Trump and damaging to Biden, I don't think connects with that authenticity that gives Trump a chance, right? And I think we should want that. So I understand that there's a sense where that can be rough, but I mean, come on, folks. Like we got a rematch between two very olds. That's true. That is an objective fact. We've got, as I mentioned, one struggles with staying on message for one reason. The other one struggles because he's barely there. So, similar challenges in different directions. We can argue about how many pizza boxes each of them can carry and maybe judge it that way. But I think if we're honest about the vulnerabilities and challenges to both campaigns, then you see, frankly, why this is a competitive race. Typically, if you've been defeated, look at here's one for you, Ray. Look at Mitt Romney. Recycled candidates typically don't fare that well. And once folks say, nah, that didn't work, they kind of move on. Well, with Trump, they clearly didn't. So there's something there that I think people like and they want to engage. Trump is basically running on or not Trump. Biden is running technically on two things. Make the election a referendum on Trump and avoid discussing Biden's vulnerabilities. I think we're going to see similar numbers to 2020 and 2024. I wouldn't be shocked if we had another record-setting election. That, to me, Trump is just such a driver for Democrats. They don't love Joe Biden. I'm going to say that again and again. Nobody really loves Joe. I'm sorry, Joe. This is we are the anti-Trump. Joe just happens to be the placeholder. That's the reason Charles Barkley, Mark Cuban, other folks publicly have said, effectively, if Joe Biden has a pulse, I'll vote for him. Like that mantra is not, I love that. That's not how you tell someone you love them and you think they're great. It's a protest vote against the other candidate. That's the deal. Let's look at the economy. Here's the truth. Joe Biden has some positive economic arguments to make. Now, they all make it versus a negative baseline. Basically, well, COVID was bad, so look at all the progress we've made since then. GDP growth, investment, unemployment. He's got positive things he can say about the trajectory of the economy. record deficit reduction. Well, guess what? When you spend like you're drunk and then you stop doing that quite as much, you have deficit reduction. That's not a big deal. But here's what's happening. His economic message, President Biden's economic message, is just devastated by inflation. And he points out and says, well, look, my policies have slowed inflation. Cool. Yeah, the Federal Reserve Board's higher interest rates have indeed done that. But here's a quote, and we'll get to the analysis of this quote and chew through it on the other side of the break. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen told ABC News at the end of January, here's what she said. Well, I think most Americans know that prices are not likely to fall. It's not the Fed's objective to try to push the level of prices back to where they were. And with that, President Biden's economic message is stuck in the mud. Because as long as people feel those high prices, telling them that they won't keep going higher at the same rate does not matter. We'll keep talking about this conversation, and we'll get to some of the State of the Union topics in the next hour or two. I appreciate you being with me. I'm Cameron Smith, and you're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back. Cameron Smith here, filling in for Matt Murphy. Sally on the Members Nutrition Super Text line said, Trump is like bad medicine. It may be unpleasant, but it's necessary to correct the problem. And I suggested it's kind of like flaming medicine at times. It's just, imagine that you're going to take your cough medicine and it's on fire. I mean, it gives you a pause. And then Sally mentioned sometimes you got to burn the forest to get new growth. Which, okay, Sally, okay, I appreciate that. Oh, here's a good one from 58878. I really wish we could stop calling the mushy middle independents. Instead, let's call them indecisive, unable to make a choice. I believe that these are the ones that follow the polls, have trouble making their own choices, and vote for who they're told on the morning of the election. Okay, I hear you, but that seems kind of the opposite, right? Because if you've already decided what team you're for, it's easy, it's over, it's done, right? Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, let's go. But for folks that say, well, you know, I like Republicans on immigration, I like Democrats on civil rights issues, I mean, that's possible, right? And fair weather voter, Jeff said, fair weather voters. I get it, guys. We live in Tennessee. Folks in California feel the same way. They're like, this should be easy. Everybody thinks like we do. But it's kind of funny. Every time. Matt points out, and Matt's right, Matt's usually right, partisans are always so mad at independents. You know why, Matt? Because, and I say this in my piece that's coming out, just getting your own side is not enough to win the election nationally. You can't win the White House without pulling somebody else. The nation's just split. I know it doesn't feel that way in Tennessee. Doesn't feel that way in Alabama. Doesn't feel that way in California. It doesn't feel that way in New York. It doesn't. But it is. I can tell you that definitively. That's not just polling. We can see voter turnout, all that. We know where people are. So those independent voters, you can hate them all you want, but you kind of need them. We'll get to that in a minute. I think that is a very, very relevant point. I want to keep chewing through this analysis. You can join in, Members Nutrition Super Text line, 615-737-9986, or you can call in. You know, Bell's decided to, run away, but, when he gets back, just call in. So the point is, with Janet yelling out, telling people prices aren't going down, Joe Biden sunk on the economy. He can point out all the indicators all he wants. It's not going to carry any water when you're looking at a box of cereal that's $7. I promise you, it won't. And we know that the economy is by far the biggest issue driving voters. They just care about it the most. That's pretty much always the case. And it goes right now, call it it's the number one concern for a huge swath of the voters, like 80%. And there's all kinds of polling on this. You can check it out. But on this issue stuff, the polling's actually pretty good because it's not as politically charged. It's just, what are you thinking about? Immigration. This is the one, and we talk about this all the time. When we kind of go through the State of the Union, we'll kind of do a deep dive in the numbers and look at what's happening. But I'm going to boil this down for you in a way that I think is just really easy to understand why, again, Biden can't use the issue. It used to be more of a Republican niche issue, that Republicans were like, this doesn't make much sense. Our border's not secure. This is the thing. But when it started really impacting New York, and you can look at the governors of Texas, you can look at DeSantis in Florida, say, no, you guys get to feel the pain too. And started shipping these migrants, but just the sheer volume, frankly. It wasn't all these flights and buses. It's just the sheer volume. and folks thinking, oh, well, blue places will let us do what we want. They will provide all the benefits in a way that a lot of these red states won't, so we're going to go there. It turned this into the single most important issue behind the economy for everybody. I'm not talking about just Republicans. According to Gallup polling, the number of voters citing immigration as their top concern has increased more than 300% from August 23 to February of 24. I want you to think about that. It has gone up 300% in a matter of months because people are looking at what's actually happening and saying, yeesh, this looks really bad. Again, we can discuss the granular details, but that's the deal. And here's the problem. Biden made a big showing literally hours after taking office. We're not talking days, we're not talking weeks, hours after taking office, of reversing the Trump era executive orders on immigration. I don't know if you guys were there, but I remember it. And it's sort of like, wait a minute. Here's what the situation at the border will not transform overnight, the senior Biden official said. This is in large part due to the damage done over the last 4 years, but we're committed to addressing it in full. After they did that, that's what we were talking about. And Biden was actually telling people we're going to get this under control. It did change overnight on his watch, and it got way, way worse. And so he owns this. It's not fair to suggest, well, this is just seasonal shifts. It's not. I can see the numbers. I can tell you. We're going to talk about it. It isn't. Remember when they told us inflation was transitory too? It was not. And that's what we're up against, is we're facing the issues. We're looking at them and saying, wait a minute, this is really out of hand. Biden made this show out of doing it. Things got worse. And now he's got to explain why really it's not his fault. Sure, he's going to blame Trump for squishing the comprehensive immigration reform bill. To be honest, Langford had put some really good things in there, ending catch release, a lot of things that actually made a lot of sense from a policy perspective. But it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. No voter is going to be like, well, you know, Biden reversed Trump's immigration orders. The chaos ensued. But you know, Trump said that Republicans shouldn't fix it right now. He wanted to campaign on it because as much as it might be annoying, it's perfectly legitimate for Trump to say, hey, you know what? When I take office, we're going to have a better immigration reform than what we'd have under Biden with this compromise deal. And if he had the Senate and the House, he might be right. Now, what's going to be rough is if there were a lot of positive things, there was an opportunity for a deal, Republicans could have made progress, Trump loses the election, and then it's worse, right? That's a gamble. That's a risk. It's a political calculus. But I just don't think, again, on that issue, he's got a leg to stand on. And then when you go down the issue priority list, people start falling off into like individual small interests. Like those are the big things people care about. They generally care. The only other double-digit highest priority for folks in all of the longitudinal polling that's out there is government and poor leadership being a concern. Well, yeah, because government is dysfunctional. We focus on punching each other in the face first and governing second. Well, you know, maybe part of this is that we should decide more of these things at the state level where we have more consensus, where government's a little closer. Maybe it's why our founders were thinking federalizing a bunch of policy seems like a bad idea and really hard to do. Maybe we should have enumerated powers in the Constitution. Maybe we should limit the federal government. Maybe we shouldn't decide that everything is actually just spending and so the federal government can do whatever it wants. If we're truly honest, that's a big part of our problem is we want one-size-fits-all solutions that are what we want for people that don't think and value the same things we do. We're all Americans. It may shock you to learn that the folks in California and New York are just as American as those of us in Tennessee and Alabama. They are. That was wild. But our founding fathers did recognize it would be difficult, even at a time when our nation was much smaller, to get everybody on the same page on policy issues. That's an inartful, simple way of saying it. But the idea that we're just going to tell the other country what we value and they're going to just suck it up and deal with it, that's a really bad model of governing, and it's why we can't get much done. And this is going to sound wild, but for example, a lot of the arguments that the House Freedom Caucus is making, particularly on economics, some of their tactics drive me insane. But on economics, about government spending and about it being wild, they're absolutely right. And again, it's a matter of, okay, well, how do we roll this back? It's, well, stop doing so much at the federal level. Stop trying to make the federal government Jesus that saves all people from their sins. It doesn't. It sprays money everywhere. That's basically what it does. There's some things that are properly the federal government's role. A organized system of immigration, for example, national defense. That's eminently reasonable. But the idea that we're doing everything for everyone, huge part of the problem. Okay. So we see Biden's pathway, right? We see what he's doing. We see where he's going with all of this. And this is common. We've seen this blueprint before. So what about Trump? Let's talk about Trump for a minute, because, and again, we'll take a break in a couple minutes. We'll kind of get the rest of this at the top of the hour. Trump's electoral math is actually more complicated with Republicans and independent voters than it is with Democrats. Democrats are not going to beat Trump. Just alone, if the Democrats turn out, I don't think they'll beat him. What Trump has to figure out is Republicans and independents. Trump cleared the primary field again, operating as the de facto incumbent. Let's be honest about this. He's a former president. The rest of the field, DeSantis, Ramaswamy, Haley, not former presidents. More importantly, they all talked about how he was a great president until they didn't, and then they got out. Terrible campaign strategy by all of them. Because if you're basically like, I like the guy and think that he did a good job from a policy perspective and I worked for him or with him, it's really hard to then come back and say, I'm the better option. It just is. But what we saw is that in states that we know are relevant to the outcome of the general election, 20 to 30% of the Republican primary said somebody else. And Iowa was higher. I understand it was a more crowded race, but I don't think that you can just look at that and say, yeah, like, oh, this is great. And this is, again, Ray's going to love this. Here's the type of stuff Trump says. We're getting rid of the Romneys of the world. He said this last Saturday. We want to get Romneys and those out. And he says this stuff all the time. It's basically, you must agree with me on everything in an unquestionable fashion, or you can't be a part. The Trump land has burned Reagan's big tent to the ground. It's, you do it our way, you bend the knee, or get out. Carrie Lake over in Arizona, she does the same thing. It's cost her politically in a state like Arizona. That's true. And so some folks, like Senator Tommy Tuberville out of Alabama, have said, well, those are just Democrats. I think there's some truth to that. I think Democrats and independents who didn't like Trump did cross over and vote in some of the Republican primaries. It's that protest vote thing. But I don't think it's fair to say that it's all of them. And let's just say it's 50%. And that's a very conservative estimate. So let's say 50% are bona fide Republican voters who are just like, ugh, I'm just not sure about Trump. I've got an option in the primary. In the general, they're looking at the ticket and they see Biden and they see Trump. Well, if we know, what do we know about the Democrats? They're going to show up if Joe Biden has a pulse. You think the same can be said for those Nikki Haley voters? You think they're going to just say, well, if Donald Trump has a pulse, I'm going to go vote. I think you have what in the political space is known as an enthusiasm gap there. And I think that's potentially a problem because call it 10 to 15%. Just cut those numbers in half and say, you got a problem. And I don't think this idea, Democrats and the talking heads in the media have lost it if they think most of these voters are going, most of the Haley voters, for example, are going to Joe Biden. They're not. I want to be real clear. So let's say Democrat or independent votes in the primary, you're going to see a little bit of a rollover, but we'll talk about that on the other side of the break. I'm Cameron Smith, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back for the second hour of the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith, and I appreciate you guys engaging the Members Nutrition Super Text line, 615-737-9986. John and I are having a spirited discussion. He says, your view is that you must allow the corruption in the rhinos. I would argue they're one and the same, because you can never win unless you bend to the faction as well. All right. I want to address this head on. This is a math problem. This is a strategic concern. This is why Reagan's big tent worked. It's okay. Y'all can have different views. You can be the Haley Republican. You can be the DeSantis Republican. You can be the Trump Republican. As long as you're a Republican. Sounds good. Welcome. That's politics by addition. What John proposes is, well, we need to cull them out. We need to get rid of some of the Republicans. And sure, if people are ethically corrupt, if people are doing things that are illegal, if they're not supporting Republican priorities, I mean, for example, a Republican that voted with Adam Schiff 100% of the time would not be a great big tent Republican either. They're a Democrat, right? But the idea that Republicans can afford to lose, call it 20% of the Republican base and still win the election, rejects math. It says, oh, well, I think we got this. We can shrink the Republican Party and somehow still win. No, you can't. That's not a thing. You can look at the math. You can see where the votes are. You can see vote totals. You can see what we're going against. But if disaffected Republicans, folks that feel like, for whatever reason you've decided my views aren't welcome, stay home, write in somebody, Trump loses. Full stop. I think that's a greater election vulnerability to him than the criminal prosecutions versus him. Very, very serious. A couple of you guys are very smart, and you made a couple of great points. One, right now, Trump's ahead of Biden in some of these swing states. Yes, that's absolutely true. A couple reasons for that. We haven't gone into full basement mode with Joe Biden yet. We just haven't got there. And the idea that that's not coming is silly. That's exactly what they're about to do. He's about to disappear. We're going to hear a lot more from Trump because Trump thinks that's in his best interest and he likes to talk. And we're going to hear a lot less of Biden because he thinks that's in his best interest and his handlers don't want him to talk. So Ray made this point, and Ray and I go back and forth all the time. Ray said, if any so-called Republican won't vote for Trump and allows Biden to be reelected, they aren't a Republican in the first place. All right, fine. But my point is not what happens after the fact. It's how do you get them to the table in the first place? How do you get them to show up and say, you know what? I can see you guys. You text in. Some days I wish you could all see everybody's comments. Because a lot of you texted in and said, not my first choice, but I'll roll with it because it's better than Biden. Okay, fine. That's a fair take. How do you get more Republicans to say that as opposed to, I don't know. Or I'm going to write in my best friend. I think that's my point. It's not what you say about people after the fact. It's what do you do before the fact? And I think Trump has to answer that question. The advantages he enjoys now, it's also kind of interesting because RFK Jr. is sitting out there. This is one that to be blunt, I've followed this. A lot of RFK Jr. stuff seems interesting. A lot of it seems super weird and kind of crazy. This guy started with Dennis Kucinich as his campaign manager. The idea that he's a conservative is nuts. But there's a lot of you guys that are like, this guy's kind of interesting. I'll give you some of the ideas are interesting. But some of them are not conservative at all. They're not in that same thing, right? But he's polling at like 20% in a three-way race between Biden, Trump, and RFK Jr. He's at like 18 to 22%, someone in there, which is shocking to me. And the truth is, in 2023, at the end of 2023, the polling said, well, this is really going to hurt Trump. And now where we are, I guess the last one I saw was January or February of 2024. It's like, no, this is actually going to hurt Biden. I don't know. If I'm honest, I don't know where that one goes. But he's got something there. I don't know if it's enough juice to get him to the presidency, but it's certainly he's not a 5%er. He's not a 1%er. And so he's absolutely going to affect the race. So there's a couple things that are happening right now that I think we need to address. And then we'll kind of wrap up this and move to State of the Union stuff. We got two older, flawed candidates in different ways that have different vulnerabilities. I think Biden, as far as a presidential incumbent, I mean, realistically, this is incumbent versus incumbent, but I think that Biden is so uniquely beatable now because he's got a record, right? On the issues that are on top of mind for voters right now, they view Trump and Republicans generally as more effective on economy and immigration. That's because of this, price of cereal and what's happening at the southern border. So it would not shock me to see Trump continue to have an advantage for a little bit. But this is going to get razor thin and competitive once Joe Biden makes it to the basement. And that's just the truth. I don't think it goes from a blowout either way. But right now I'd call it a toss-up, and really that RFK vote. If Republicans who are Trump-based voters say, I'm going to give RFK Jr. a shot. I really like him. He's new. It'll hurt Trump more. If Democrats say, well, I like RFK Jr. because he's a Kennedy and he, on some of his social policies, it's more in line with where I am, then I think that could happen. And so that to me is is the layout of the land. It's what we're dealing with. And again, I want to be clear, and some of you, here's 09550. Please stop saying Trump is a flawed candidate. Not true. Well, most politicians are flawed candidates to some degree. I mean, it's fine to talk about what they do well and where they have challenges. The idea that we can't mention those seems kind of silly. We talk about Joe Biden's flaws all the time. We rarely talk about some of the things he's done well. I disagreed with most of Barack Obama's policies, almost all of them, in fact. But he had a fatherhood initiative that was really great. So pointing out somebody's flaws in politics, again, is authentic. I think it is ridiculous for any of us to be dishonest about a political candidate when we would be honest about each other. We would say, hey, Cameron's good at this stuff. He's not so great at that stuff. Same with Bell. Same with any of you listening. And that's okay. I mean, some of the distractions and unforced errors that Trump puts out there, yes, I understand the media magnifies it. And yes, the media is not, by and large, on the side of Republicans. But it's okay to point out when somebody makes an unforced error and does something goofy. Like, okay. I mean, welcome to politics. Oh, 6695 said, our problem on the Republican side is we've got too many people that let their emotions control their opinion instead of logic. Amen. I think there's some truth to that.
No, we don't.
Bell says no. I think so, but most people actually function more on their feelings than their logic. There are not very coldly rational people, and if you meet one of them, they're kind of like a lizard person. Emotion really drives politics. It always has. Like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I do think the vice president discussion is really interesting because it would be really easy to say somebody like Nikki Haley, mend the fences, Nikki Haley. The fact that politicians trash each other has never been a barrier to them being a vice president pick. The problem here is that the vice presidency, particularly in Trump's second term here, if he were successful, is going to be seen as a stepping stool to be the party's nominee. Well, here's the deal. The Republican Party looked at Nikki Haley and basically said, nah. Let's be upfront about that. Said, nah, nope. But the idea that then Trump would pick her as the VP and then she's sort of the front runner for the next cycle, I think that you're going to have a lot of Trump's base that's like, absolutely not. And so using the vice president pick to go after sort of to have a reconciliation candidate, maybe a Tim Scott, maybe. Somebody suggests Vivek Ramaswamy. I think you basically get Trump, but you don't. He's not going to appeal to a lot of the folks in the party that are sort of like not so sure about Trump because he's kind of like Trump that's younger and with a lot more energy. So I don't know what he actually does. I want to say somebody younger, somebody that, you know, is. I'll use Katie Britt because she's doing the State of the Union response, but somebody like her doesn't have a lot of a track record, hasn't really sort of been super steeped as like a Carrie Lake, MAGA, marching line type person, but also hasn't been over in the Nikki Haley camp, right? Like it's got to be somebody that's endorsed Trump, but is also somebody that folks see as reasonable, not a bomb thrower. Like that's kind of Byron Donalds, I don't think is a bad choice. I think he would be interesting. And, you know, Ray's saying bet you out of any amount of money, it's going to be Tim Scott. I think that's fair. I think that checks a lot of what Trump's looking for. You don't have an aggressive personality clash there. We saw that on the campaign trail. Scott's a level-headed guy. Again, though, I don't know. You guys tell me. After seeing Scott on the campaign trail, I'm not sure that he has future presidential upside. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see it. So that would be sort of another question like a Haley is, what do you think the Republican Party rallies around them in the next cycle? So I wish I had a better answer. I think Tim Scott, Byron Donalds wouldn't bother me. I just think it's got to be younger, somebody that has kind of their own independent voice, not going to step on Trump's toes, but has sort of a game plan for the future. That's probably where I think we are and what we're looking for. I think that Todd says Dems have a hive mind where the reps all want to be the one in power. I mean, you should go hang out in Washington, Todd. Everyone there wants to be the one in power. Every congressman wants to be a senator. Every senator wants to be the president. I mean, I wish that weren't true, but it is. 10473 says Nikki Haley has cemented her position in the Democrat Party. If you can't see the Biden destroying the values of America and therefore losing this election, we're all doomed because he's destroying the few values and morals we have left. Oh, Sarah Huckabee. That's an interesting pick that y'all are throwing out. Again, younger, yes, I think that is interesting. I don't know as far as a unifier, it's sort of cutting the Trump mold. Maybe. But back to the idea that we're all doomed. We're not doomed. We're not doomed. I just want to say that. The idea, I mean, literally, I have heard this every single election since, I guess, Bush, that this election will determine the fate of a nation. And that if we don't get it right, we will all die. Y'all need to stop spreading that political garbage. Come on, guys. Like, most of you guys that are on the Super Talk text lines have seen enough election cycles to know you've heard the same rhetoric over and over again. I don't buy the liberal garbage of like democracy will automatically die if Trump wins. No. It's based on what actually happens, not on somebody's personality and not on political rhetoric. If we're going to do governing based on political rhetoric, we are in big trouble. I'm not suggesting that everything Trump or Biden, for that matter, says is great, but I look at the tail of the tape. We got a Governor Kristi Noem suggestion. Says 8335 says she's totally hot. That's got to count for something. Which, hey, I take your point. We'll keep going in this conversation. We'll move to the State of the Union. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back. Man, you guys are really active. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on the wonderful, great, awesome Matt Murphy Show. Members Nutrition Super Text line 615-737-9986. Y'all are going to be surprised at some of the answers that you guys are throwing in here. We've got Dr. Carol Swain. Several of y'all have said that. A couple of y'all said Candace Owens. A lot of you, it's kind of surprising me, a lot of you guys have said Condoleezza Rice. One for Taylor Swift. And then some of the others that we were talking about. I do think it matters. What's interesting here, yes, Todd, Matt is okay. Just so you know, I talked to Matt. Matt is okay. He's just not here today, so I'm here. You don't have to put up with me that long. Matt will come back, and he will make everybody feel good again. I think the issue here is that when we look at the different VP candidates, we also need a mind of the future. I think that's where Pence kind of fell a little short. One, I like Mike Pence just fine, but he's just not. Let's be honest, he's just not that interesting. He's very boring. And I don't think anybody was like, you know what? He's the heir apparent and he will take the Republican Party into the future. And I get it. Trump didn't move out of the way for him to do that. I don't think that he would have been the nominee even if Trump did. And I get it. Trump's got a big personality. He likes to do it his way. He likes people that tell him yes. I understand that. The problem is that somebody like Mike Pence doesn't give you that future capacity. I understand there are Pence voters that like Mike Pence, but I just don't think he's gonna, like somebody like that that's sort of a cardboard placeholder is gonna do the trick either, because most of us are kind of wondering what comes next, right? And I've written about this. I've been very, very clear. Trump is a force of nature. He is quite authentic. He is the guy who is, here's the way I am, take it or leave it. And right now, that stands out in politics because it's weird, but politicians have not gotten the memo. That's the reason nobody really cares that much about anyone else but Trump in the Republican Party, because authenticity always, and I mean always, stands out in politics because everybody's plastic and they tell you what you want to hear, right? Like Trump tells people, he did this when he's running the first time. He's like, I'm not actually particularly conservative. Do you think people were like running for the exits and like jumping off buildings to be like, no, not Trump? Of course not. Like, okay, fair enough. When you're authentic, people respect that. They just do. And so the rest of the political class, and this is what's so hilarious, this is why the Republican primary was such a joke, is the rest of the political class is sort of like, I'm going to be like him. They're like Trump lights. But it's not really who I am, but I'm going to kind of try to emulate that and try to be like that because I think that's what people want. You know what people like about Trump? And I've seen this. I've looked at this guy. I'm like, this is so weird. What is going on here? It's authenticity. Policies are great, but honestly, some of the policies are kind of all over the place. Some of it's protectionist, which is like 70s style Democrat. We've got some, the courting of the union stuff, which hasn't been historically Republican. We've got the regulatory cutting that it was very much in keeping with like a traditional Republican. It's kind of just all over the map from a policy wise. A lot of it's good conservative policy. Obviously, the judges were. But this to me is very interesting because the authenticity that he provides, even when I don't like some of the things he says, is just such a contrast to the rest of the political field right now. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll figure out the rest of it. And John has pointed out that Matt's actually covering for Brian today. So you get to hear him right after this. I'll high-five him on the way out. So thank you guys. We're taking a break. Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back, Team Awesome, to the Matt Murphy Show. John corrected me because I said Matt was not here. That's technically true, but he's filling in for Brian, so I'm filling in for him.
He will be here later.
But he will be here later. He has a tendency to drop by a little early. He'll jump in the seat, tell me what I got wrong. It's great. So
how are the reshoots on Savage Lands going?
That I am glad that you asked that, Bill, because I get excited and I totally forget.
Because that's what the whole facial. That's why you look like Grizzly Adams, right?
Yes, I am playing a bear, and so couple things. Y'all have heard us talk about Savage Lands really over the last couple of years. We've talked about the project, and let me roll this back a little bit. We complain about the woke culture. We all talk about it, and we say, well, man, there's just a bunch of garbage for my family out there. So a couple buddies and I got this harebrained idea that we're going to make movies now. And we did. We went out and raised a bunch of money and said, you know what? We're going to find some people that are a little bit different, and we're not going to make this Hollyweird. We're going to make this in Tennessee. And we're going to make a movie about Davy Crockett that kids can enjoy with their families. And we did. And we had a limited theatrical release last night, and then it will be everywhere you want to watch it tomorrow. And it's an opportunity. One, I appreciate you guys' support. You hear about all the different projects I'm doing and things, but this is one over the last couple of years that I really worked on. That if we want to push back on the woke culture, we can't just say that over and over again. We got to do something. So, we actually did a thing, and I'm really excited about it. And you can go rent it or buy it on Amazon. It'll be up there on the rotator. These kind of projects, their name changes over time. Savage Land sounds super cool, but the Ballad of Davy Crockett kind of explains more of what it's about. So previously known as, that's what the cool industry people say, Savage Lands, now the Ballad of Davy Crockett. It's got William Moseley, who plays Davy Crockett from, he was Peter in the Chronicles of Narnia, and Cole Meany, who was O'Brien on Deep Space Nine, is the evil Canadian fur trapper Caleb. And it's fun, man.
Hey. He was in Next Generation 2.
Next Generation 2. That's true. He was much younger then.
Yeah. Let's get it. Let's keep it legit, okay?
I watched Next Generation with my dad. I just remember that as a kid. He'd come home from work, and this is shocking to my kids, where TV's not just whatever you want, whenever you want it. I'm like, no, there were appointments. I remember watching The X-Files with my dad, my mom not knowing about it, and it scaring me to death. And that was just so cool. My dad in his rocker with the remote, and I would sit next to him, and we'd watch Star Trek, and we'd watch X-Files. We didn't watch much else, but that was what we watched.
Did you ever tell your kids there were only 3 channels and 4 if you had PBS, and eventually you got 5th if you had a UHF frequency?
Yeah, we didn't have cable. My grandparents had cable, and that was real exotic. But I remember 3 shows distinctly that we watched. We watched Saturday. Well, I should say 4. I'll categorize Saturday morning cartoons together. That used to be a thing. No child knows that now. And we would watch Star Trek. We would watch X-Files, and my dad would stay up late and watch MASH. And these were
late?
Yeah, at that point they were MASH reruns.
Oh, okay.
And so if he was just not feeling like going to bed, MASH would come on, and it was just reruns of MASH. At that time when I was a kid, it was already old. And it's my how things have changed. And I think on entertainment and on this kind of stuff, we talk a lot about it, guys, but this is an opportunity to kind of put your money where your mouth is and support those of us who are trying to build projects in Tennessee.
When's it being released?
Friday, tomorrow. It is technically released because it came out in theaters yesterday in different markets around the country. They run a limited release pilot, but where these projects do well or not is basically online now.
Is it going to be on all the what streaming platforms will it be on?
It's on on-demand stuff. So you can rent or buy it.
Oh, so like if I have Google Play, so if I go to Google Play, it'll be okay.
You go to Google Play, Apple Store, Amazon, all that stuff. I think the only one, I think you can even get it on Comcast.
Do we know if Matt's scene in it did it survive?
I know that the scene itself exists, and Derek has given it to him. I think Derek Purvis, our director, I think is coming in tomorrow to talk with Matt about the project. And I think I know that he has the clip. I don't know.
But you don't know if it's still in the movie?
I don't think it's in the movie.
Oh, man.
But the clip exists, and if Matt Murphy wants to share it with you guys, it can indeed be shared because the thing's coming out now.
I just want to be able to sit in my house and watch it and go, hey, I work with him.
Well, if you see one of the bears in there and you recognize the beard,
it's you.
It's me. So again, thank you for the aside bell. That is a labor of love. If you care about pushing back on the crazy culture, you got to make things. That's just the truth. And in Tennessee right now, the Daily Wire is trying to pump out content. They're really doing good at building projects. Anytime, whether it's an organization in studio like what they're doing, whether it's independent film like what we're doing, support that, please, because we want to reinforce to the state of Tennessee, to other folks that, hey, we can make things here that reflect our values and things that we care about. And this sounds wild, but like the future is a competition for the kids, right? It will always be. Always. Nobody wants to say that, but Hollywood's been coming for your kids for a very, very, very long time. The only way you change that is by doing the same in a different direction. Saying, hey, we got a different set of values. Now, look, you want to know something? People are tired of being preached at. Sandra said this when we were talking about the way folks make you feel. It really does matter. And she said, people like you by the way you make them feel. I'm not going to watch tonight. I'm talking about the State of the Union. We'll catch the lowlights tomorrow. And I think that really matters. We've felt like we'd been beaten down by the culture that says, oh, you're a person of faith. You're a Christian. You love Jesus. Stop talking about that. Oh, you pray to God? Oh, no. Stop talking about that. Shut up. Oh, you don't think the government is the answer to all people's problems? Oh, I'm going to need you to talk. Oh, did you know that there are 4,000 different genders? Oh, you don't. You're a bigot, probably. Oh, you're a Republican? That may mean you're a racist. That's what we've been getting is this diet of like bang, bang, bang. And people are tired of that. And you know what? When I go watch a movie with my family, I don't want to worry about ideological indoctrination. I want to be entertained in an age-appropriate fashion. You can go watch Ballad of Davy, Crockett. I'm guessing the Film Academy is not going to give us any awards. But what I can tell you is as a father or a mother, if you go see that with your young kids, they're going to have a blast. It's going to be fun. It's shot here in Tennessee, over in Kingston Springs. Like not that far from, if you can hear the sound of my voice in Kingston Springs, we shot it in your community. We shot it at State Park. I mean, we're doing stuff here, and I think that's what I can promise you is that you go see it, that your kids are going to be like, oh, man, that was fun. Davy Crockett's cool. And that's about it. There's not going to be like, well, you know, what about this ideology or that ideology? It's bad guy, good guy, fun. And, hey, you know what? You should go protect your family. Like, that's the big message. Davy Crockett starts off in this big, like, meeting about what are we going to do about the Indians, and then he gets a message that his wife's sick, and he says, you know what? Y'all pause all this really important stuff. I got to go make sure my family's okay. Like, that's the big deal, right? Like, go take care of your family. Like, that matters a lot. And in an age of Marvel superheroes and all that stuff, like, I don't know. My dad's my hero. And so to have a to be able to make a movie that shows a dad who's a prominent politician of the era, who's famous, to say, you know what, I'm going to drop everything. When Andrew Jackson's breathing, the president of the United States is breathing down my throat to back him, I'm going to go do this. And he makes some friends along the way. They're Indians. And you know what? He realizes that maybe that stuff, and protecting my family, maybe some of the stuff that Andrew Jackson was selling was a bunch of garbage. And that, the rest is history, folks. Like, we know that. You know, he told Jackson to pound sand on the Indian removal stuff, headed off to Texas, and ultimately died in the Alamo. And, you know, this is not a documentary. It is not there to be like, these are the historical facts. It is a historiodrama, and it's fun. It's called The Ballad of Davy Crockett for a reason, because here's a historical figure, and it's something that I want you guys to talk about and share. So a couple things that I'll do when I have the regular release, I'll put it on my social media at D. Cameron Smith on X, and I'll make sure Matt has it for you guys. You should be able to just see it like on Amazon Prime, like Prime Video, Ballad of Davy Crockett, search for it coming Friday. But I'll post all the release stuff and I'll share it with you guys, because you don't know how much it means to me to make these products and then have you guys rent or buy them, come see them, and tell us that you want more, right? Like, that's how it works for capitalists. Like, you can tell me you like my projects. People lie all the time with their words. They don't lie with their money. And we've been given our money. It's something that Daily Wire folks said that I thought was really profound. You've been given money to people who hate you. And, okay, maybe they don't hate you directly, but they don't share your values at all. You can watch this, and I think it will. And frankly, I want your feedback. I want your input. I want your, hey, what about this? Like, this could make it better. Why don't you do this? This didn't make sense to me. I like this. I don't like that. Like, I want all of it, right? Because we not only want to make more build more projects, put more stuff out there, we want it to matter to you. Because we want the values from a place like Tennessee to come through. And so we're only going to know that. And look, you don't like the left preaching to us. I'm not about to, create projects that preach. I think Republicans miss this. They're like, we hate being preached at by the left, so we're going to preach at the left from the right. Like, no. I want to entertain you in a way that you can watch with your family and not feel gross. I want you to be able to know that a project that Triptych Media makes is going to be okay for your kids to watch. You don't have to freak out. Like, that's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. And so, again, I understand that's a big aside, but it's coming. And it's been, one of y'all made a good point that, hey, we've got the Davy Crockett from Disney, right? Remember that, King of the Wild Frontier. That was 100 years ago. And that's the reason we wanted to revive the hero, the character, because it's been a minute. And I think people forget these kind of things. But that's what matters, and we got to make choices here. So I want, again, and appreciate you guys supporting those type of projects, but tell me who else is doing good stuff too. It's not just, me and the folks that decided to do the crazy thing of making a movie with Triptych Media. It is, who are the other independent movie makers? Who are the other studios like Daily Wire? Who are people doing things here that connect with your family values? Let me know, because I want to talk about them too. Because this stuff is really hard. It's really crazy. I'm creative as a writer, but some of the level of creativity that's required to create a scene in Washington, D.C. in the middle of a muddy field in Kingston Springs, Tennessee is way beyond what I can do. And I'm just privileged. Angel Studios. I don't know much about Angel Studios, but I think finding those folks, supporting them, encouraging them. If you care about our culture and the trajectory, you got to support a different direction. That's the sum total of my message. Tell me about woke culture over and over. Tell me how horrible it is. I hear you. I agree with you. Now what are we going to do? This is an effort to answer that question. I don't think it's the final answer, but it's a start. And I want you to know that that's really important to me, that when I hear from you guys, when I hear of things, I'm going to go to the legislature. I'm going to write about it. And it's really, really important to me that you guys know that, right? That we're just not just talking back and forth. What you guys say matters. It makes me think, and then that impacts what I write, what I do. And I hope it matters to you guys too. I know that when Matt and Brian and Chris and Dan hear from you, it's very similar. They're always talking to members of the legislature, the governor's office, other people like, hey, we're hearing a lot of this. So please engage here. Don't think this is just some passive thing that you listen to, while you're putzing around the garage. Like this is real, and you don't know how much I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your participation today. The Members Nutrition Super Text line on 615-737-9986. Give me some calls. Give me more feedback on the text line. We're going to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith, and you're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. We don't have much time. We're coming back, but we're going to talk about the State of the Union, and I want to know, what's the state of your union, your family, what's going on? We'll go through these in the final hour. I want to hear from you. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
Two o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 60 degrees in Nashville, partly sunny on Music Row. Weather forecast coming up in 2 minutes. The United States conducting strikes in the Red Sea after 3 sailors were killed in a Houthi missile attack on a ship off the coast of Yemen earlier this week. Louis Martinez reports.
There were 3 fatalities in this latest strike by the Houthis against commercial shipping. This was a tanker that was essentially in the Gulf of Aden. We know that a U.S. cruiser responded as well as an Indian warship. And there have been images showing the rescue of the members of the crew. It once again points to the Houthis being able to continue to launch these kinds of attacks against commercial shipping, despite the presence of U.S. military and other nations with warships in the region.
Right now in Tennessee, it's now the 11th day of the search for the autistic 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers out of Sumner County. And there are some new developments. Kentucky State Police searching a landfill in Hopkins County where trash went from Rogers' neighborhood. The Sumner County Sheriff's Office says, quote, there's no specific information that indicates evidence related to the search for Sebastian may be there. Rather, it is an investigative precautionary measure to eliminate possible options and questions. And as an inquest into last year's mass shooting in Maine continues, we're learning more about analysis being done on the gunman's brain. Mark Remillard.
Doctors studying the brain of Robert Card, who killed 18 people in Lewiston, Maine last year, say he likely suffered from traumatic brain injury. A study of Card's brain by Boston University CTE Center showed degradation in parts of his brain, but noted that there was no evidence of CTE. Health officials say traumatic brain injuries are associated with an increased risk of behavioral or emotional issues, but do not mean that someone will become violent.
And that is the latest news. Weather forecast next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Welcome back to the final hour of the Matt Murphy Show. I am not Matt Murphy, but I'm Cameron Smith. Matt Murphy will be filling in for Brian, so you'll get to hear him next. Don't worry. I know some of you were concerned. You haven't got your daily dose of Matt Murphy. Withdrawals are serious. I understand. But he's coming. You'll be good. A couple things that you guys have mentioned and I wanted to throw out there, particularly Angel Studios with The Chosen. I didn't make the connection between the two. The Chosen is a series that I know a lot of you love about the life of Christ, and super cool. Some of y'all have asked for information. I literally just tweeted out the trailer for the Ballad of Davy Crockett at D as in David, Cameron Smith on X. I did hashtag TN Politics because that's an easy way to find stuff as well. So if y'all want to go check it out, that's how you can find my Twitter account, and that's where I'll post all the updates, things like that, the clip of Matt, if he'll let us share that. We can do a lot of fun stuff. So
ask forgiveness, not permission.
As forgiveness, not permission. The outtakes would be great. I did, see him in costume. That was actually fairly cool, and he very much looked the part. So I thought that was pretty neat. So here's one of the things that I want to go over in this last hour, because the State of the Union is coming. It's coming tonight. I think it's probably going to be pretty boring. I don't think, unless we have sort of the performative antics where somebody shouts out or Nancy Pelosi tears up a speech. Now, I doubt she's going to do that this time. But politicians love the spotlight. And so if there's an opportunity to shout out something or make some physical gesture, well, there's a lot of physical gestures that might be made tonight. They like that. I think Republicans the best thing they can do is let Joe Biden talk. I think over an extended period of time, this is a great opportunity for Joe Biden either to show he's got the energy, got the goods to maintain clarity and focus over the time. And let's be honest, it is physically taxing to stand up and address Congress like that. You got to be on. It's a serious limelight event. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And to see how he does. Again, do I think he can make it through? Sure. Do I think he's going to have some gaffes and stumbles? Probably. If he knocks it clean, sticks the landing, I think that helps him and gives him the ability to say, see, look, I can stand and deliver. Let's be honest about politicians, folks. We're not asking them to wrestle. It's not exactly the most physically demanding job in the world. I understand a lot of politicians want to make you think it is, but I've been around the House, the Senate. It is intellectually demanding. It is exhausting, but the level of exhaustion is basically walking around. You got people to drive you places. You got to walk around and think. And so if you can't do that, you're probably not really fit. And I guess we'll find out sort of where Biden is when he has to stand and deliver for an extended period of time tonight. And again, we'll see how it goes. One of the things that I'm doing, and I'll make a commitment to you guys on this, I'm going to write a State of the Union reaction. And what I want from you right now, if you're listening to the sound of my voice, tell me what you really care about. And tell me why. I'm going to write a column. I'm going to put it in the Tennessean. It'll be in the 3 papers across the state, online in those markets. What do you care about? What do you want to see the president and Congress address? What's the state of your family? What's going on? If you use the Members Nutrition Super Text line, 615-737-9986, and what I want you to do is tell me the answer. Tell me what you care about. What do you want from Washington, right? I mean, I think we fail to ask that question a lot. What do you actually want them to solve? I don't want him to solve everything, but there's a couple things I'd like him to get out of the way on. What is it that you want? What's the state of your family? And give me some brief hits, and I'll use it in the column. And just give me your name and where you're from in Tennessee. And if you're hearing this, you're not in Tennessee, where you're from, city, state. And I'll pull from those, and I'll put it in the piece. And then when it runs, hey, you get quoted, because I think that's what actually matters. Let's talk about the areas that we matter based on. I'm just going to do it based on the top 3. And what I mean by that is Gallup does polling and it asks folks, hey, what's the number one issue you want the president and Congress to address? That's basically the question. Super easy. Economy's number 1, immigration number 2, governance / poor leadership's number 3, and then it kind of trickles down into the single digits from there. On the economy, one thing that matters is that Secretary Yellen quote that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Well, I think most Americans know that prices are not likely to fall. It's not the Fed's objective to try to push the level of prices back to where they were. Nobody cares about you telling me that inflation's slowing down. Sweet. I've got really high interest rates. That's effective at slowing down inflation. It sure is. It's also effective at making mortgages unobtainable. Home ownership more challenging. I mean, there's consequences for all these policy decisions, but telling people we're not going to go back to where we were. We got this inflation, this price inflation, and we're just going to have to deal with it. And then Biden's supposed to convince you that he's handling the economy better than Trump? I just don't see it. I mean, maybe I'm missing something here, but when you got Biden officials saying, no, we're not going back there. It's just going to not get worse much faster. Telling people about a non-event when they're facing an actual event is always a difficult sell. And so Biden's got to explain to people, well, guys, think of how much worse it could be. I'm like, okay, but things are radically more expensive. It's not close. You know it. I know it because we experience it. And so to be like, but it could have been way worse. Okay. I just don't think that gives you a lot of cachet. And so on the economy, I don't know about you guys. I'm a cookie monster. That was my wife's nickname for me in college. I love a good chocolate chip cookie. There are chocolate chip cookies, and then everything else is dessert. This is
Chocolate chip cookies are entrees.
Oh God, they are the life, right? I've been searching for the perfect chocolate chip cookie. I bake them myself. But if you go into Franklin, so when I'm at the office at Thanks, again, come say hi. Wonderful people at Thanks, helping you grow your business with gratitude. There are a lot of cookie places around there. Those cookies in Franklin are $5 a piece. It's a cookie. We got cookie inflation, folks. You guys pointed that out. When you have cookie inflation, that is flour, butter, sugar, egg, a little salt. You want that dough nice and thick? $5 a cookie is insane. Insane. But inflation does that kind of stuff where you're looking at it. I saw the viral article about a $25 or $24 Five Guys combo. When I go to Five Guys, I eat all the peanuts. I literally eat a whole bag because I'm trying to up the value of the food. It's okay. It's not great for you. It tastes great, right? $25 for a bacon cheeseburger combo. And folks are like, this is out of control. That's what drives the economy conversation. Okay? So I don't know what Biden's going to say that people are going to be like, yeah, man, this is going great. His best chance is to be like, this could have been worse, and it's not as bad as it could have been. And I'll give him that. When you jack up those interest rates, you soak up the money. If we want to know where this inflation came from, it came from all the spending Congress does. Let's take credit. Republicans deserve credit for spending out the nose, too. The COVID give everyone a check thing was kind of dumb. I get panic, but just blowing money out with a backpack blower was not a good policy, as it turns out. And then the policy of cheap money from the Federal Reserve makes the problem worse. There's just so much extra money out there Then you had supply chain issues. That's how we got where we got. Jamming up interest rates has indeed slowed down the rate of inflation, but I don't know that anybody's like, yeah, this is great. So good luck. Immigration, I don't know how to say this delicately, but I don't know what Biden can say. I don't know what he's going to put out there that we're going to be like, okay, just during his administration. So hours into his administration, reverses those Trump policies. Like, again, this was a big show. They were like, yeah, see, we're going to fix it. We're doing things. We're good. We're great. Here's what he said. And I quote, "I'm not making new law. I'm eliminating bad policy." That was the president of the United States removing the Trump orders on immigration. So what happened? I'll just give you some of the 2021 numbers because, you know, it takes a little time for those to take effect. The numbers for October, November, and December of 2021. These are Southwest land border encounters by month. 71,929, 72,113, 73,994. So, you know, a little over 70,000 a month. That's still a lot, right? And that's in 2021, October, November, December. 2024, where are we now? 240,942. 242,407. 301,983. And these are just the enforcement encounters. This is what we're running into. So the numbers from 2021 are likely much higher based on the folks that law enforcement didn't encounter. They just walked across the border. And that means they're much higher than these numbers too. What exactly can you say in a State of the Union to address an issue the American people care about and say everything is fine? Mayorkas, the border is secure. I mean, no, it's not based on, I don't know, administration's own data. I mean,
we've been told that for 3 years.
Right.
And then suddenly this border security bill comes by and the border's a mess and it has to be fixed now with this.
Right. And I think, Bell, that you're on to something there because the urgency and panic, that's where, all right, I'm telling you, I wrote an article on it. There were some good things in that border bill, but it's the panic of like, where have you been? And now it's like either you do it or Trump has destroyed all of the immigration things and it's his fault. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's Joe Biden's fault. If we're going to place the blame, I don't want to do any of this like, well, both sides have contributed. Look, Republicans and Democrats haven't been able to fix the immigration system across the board. What we're currently seeing is not that. We had a broken immigration system before, but now we have one where there's no incentive not to come, not to be just walk across the border. It is truly, truly not just broken, but Joe Biden took specific actions that have resulted in this and has been perceived as a rather inviting president on the issue. And the numbers bear that out. The numbers bear that out. And so to suggest that, well, this is just a natural flux, it's not. It is clearly an anomaly. And there will always be realities here. Immigration is a much tougher issue than the political class suggests. I worked on it for Jeff Sessions on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I can tell you, like, Sessions wrote and pushed a lot of the Trump immigration policies. So I know what those are. These are not issues that are easy for Republicans either. But Biden took specific steps, and he doesn't have a game plan to talk about it after the fact. We got to cover governance poor leadership, national defense and terrorism, foreign policy, all kinds of stuff. But remember, I want to hear about your State of the Union. How's your family doing? Send me a message with your name and location at 615-737-9986. That's the Members Nutrition Super Text line. I want to hear from you. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith, and you're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
President Biden expected to announce an emergency military mission. We'll tell you what that is tonight at the State of the Union address. Some more crime in Tennessee, and we're hearing from a juror who took part in the trial of the armor on the set of the movie Rust. 2:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back. Cameron Smith here for Matt Murphy. Mac, I can tell you that on the set of the Ballad of Davy Crockett, we did not kill anyone.
That's good. That's a step in the right direction.
That was a big win.
Yeah, I was just looking it up when you were talking about that, man, on IMDb. It looks cool.
Yeah, we've got like I said, at D Cameron Smith tweeted out the trailer. Go check it out.
Oh, okay, cool.
But we had an armor because we had tomahawks and knives and various pistols and things like that. Also a lot
of muskets.
Yes, and horses and all kinds of different things. But particularly with all the armaments, you have to be super careful and safe with that. And so I am very glad that nobody was hurt. And still fun to watch.
I did watch the trailer during your last segment, and it looks awesome. It really does.
Yeah. I mean, so my goal, I've got 4 boys in my house, ranges in age from 9 to 14. And I wanted that group, my boys, to be like, that's cool. And so basically, according to them, I am now Martin Scorsese. They're like,
no, you're not.
Dad, when are you going to make? No, I'm definitely not. To them, it's like, Dad, we want to watch more of your movies. You need to make more movies. And I'm like, well, guys, as it turns out, they're really expensive and a royal pain in the butt to make. But sure, we're working on that. So it's a very expensive. Yes.
You guys get a job in a meat packing plant cleaning after hours, and then we'll take that money and turn it into movies.
Right. I mean, they're just expensive to make by any stretch of the imagination. They're expensive, and you want to do them well. And unfortunately, you can be fiscally conservative, but sometimes the option of cutting corners doesn't produce what you want. And
I love that Colm's playing the bad guy too.
He is a good actor, man.
Very, yes.
Like it really.
But normally he plays the good guy. He was in Gangs of New York, wasn't he?
I think he was.
I think he might have played like a heavy in that, but most of the time, when you see him, he's playing a good guy.
He really impressed me in terms of his capacity to act. I mean, just wow. I mean, and when you see it and watch it while it's being filmed, you're like, whoa. You are different. And it never dawned on me that watching something being filmed, how over the top it seems. Like the nomenclature, how they speak, the inflection. If you and I talked like that, we would laugh at each other.
Yeah.
But when it's on film, on camera, it comes out and you're like, oh, this is eminently reasonable.
Yeah, once it's been boiled down and mixed and it becomes a different animal.
You do not realize what has happened to everything that you see in terms of like Bell was talking about, the levels and things like that. Frankly, most of y'all don't realize the board that Bell's looking at of all the different levels and things that we can change in doing talk radio. But the sky's the limit in terms of what we can do in the magic of movie land.
Giggity.
It is wild. Speaking of which, my boys convinced me that watching Family Guy last night while Mom was out was a great idea.
And you regret it, don't you?
And we laughed a lot.
Oh, did you?
More than we should have about things we probably shouldn't have. And I'm like, okay, everything's fine. I love Family
Don't
Guy.
tell your mom.
I don't say that with Justine. It's more of a, you have choices here. You can tell your mother, but then we don't do this again. Like, I'm not going to tell you not to tell her. That that dog does not hunt in my family. But I'm just saying, if you want to volunteer more information about, you watching Family Guy and she talks to me about it, my guess is we're not going to do that again for a while.
Have you let her watch Rick and Morty?
No. No. We don't watch much TV at all. It was just they got their homework done. They were there and like, we want to watch something funny. And we've heard Family Guy's funny. And I'm like, well, okay, it's funny, but you're not. And what was interesting is they got some of the cultural jokes, but I did not realize how much of that show requires you to understand
pop culture
well, or you just don't get the reference. And so,
and the thing that kills me is if you get rid of, if a liberal makes your entertainment and you go, I'm getting rid of this, you have about a tiny little sliver of anything left to laugh at or enjoy. And McFarlane is about as liberal as it gets.
Yeah.
But he's still funny as all get out.
Yeah. And I don't let politics dominate what I can laugh at. But the problem is there's just so many more content makers that have leftist political leanings. I'm not saying they're all like wild, but a lot of them are. But they kind of let that stuff bleed through. When you make something, you can't help but your personality engaging the product, right? And the problem is, like you said, there's just so few folks who are politically conservative who make content. And so you just don't have that many options. And I don't like this weird game of like conservatives must watch conservative things and liberals can watch liberal. Like, no. Like, I want to make entertaining things that everybody wants to watch. But your more conservative creators, there's just not as many of them.
Yeah.
And we want to try to change that. I think it's a good thing. So going
This sucked and you failed.
Sorry, a little Stewie there.
I love some Stewie. All right. Well, we do need to take a break right now. Again, Bell and I got sidetracked. We're going to go through the other issues that Biden could address in the State of the Union. We got the economy, scratch that one. Immigration, scratch that one. We still need to get to governance and poor leadership. When I look down the list, this is going to be a nightmare. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
.231. Let's call it 232. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 66 degrees, a possibility for showers later on this afternoon in Nashville. Weather forecast on the way in 2 minutes. President Biden is expected to announce a, quote, emergency military mission to construct a port on Gaza's coast during tonight's State of the Union address. The port will increase the delivery of humanitarian aid after the White House expressed frustration with the pace of relief to civilians in Gaza. Tom Sufi-Burridge reports from Tel Aviv.
President Biden's under pressure at home to tread that delicate line between not criticizing Israel as a key ally, but pressuring Israel to do something about the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. And it shows the difficult politics right now between the Biden administration and the Israeli government. Israel insists it is doing what it can to get more aid trucks, crucially, into Gaza. But it really doesn't look, with this announcement, that the Biden administration is convinced.
Right now in Nashville, a 21-year-old man who was already in jail is facing new charges related to a bullet hole in a toddler's bedroom. Juma Ismail was charged with reckless endangerment with a deadly weapon yesterday. Detectives say they determined the bullet hole near the toddler's bed was from Ismail, who fired a gun after a homeowner fired a warning shot into the ground to scare away car burglars on Cantrell Avenue in West Nashville. We're hearing from a juror who took part in the trial of Hannah Gutierrez, the armorer on the set of the movie Rust, where a cinematographer was killed in 2021. Mark Remillard.
Gutierrez was convicted of involuntary manslaughter Wednesday after jurors deliberated for less than 3 hours. Juror Alberto Sanchez tells ABC News that Gutierrez was in charge of the weapons on set and should have made sure they were safe.
Never did the safety checks. Never checked the rounds to pull them out, to look at them, shake them. I mean, if you'd have done that, this wouldn't have happened.
Cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed and director Joel Souza was wounded when the gun held by actor Alec Baldwin went off. He faces trial in July.
That's the latest news. Weather forecast next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Welcome back, y'all. We're winding down our time together today, and I really appreciate it. Matt Murphy's coming in next. A couple things that I wanted to address. One of y'all suggested that I not tell Chris Hand about watching Family Guy with my family. I kind of chuckle at that because I get it. I mean, I came from a pretty hardline family that was like, you may not watch The Simpsons. You can't watch Beavis and Butthead. You can't, stay away from any of that stuff. And you know what I did as soon as I was out from under my parents' authority?
Respect my authority!
Exactly. South Park too, man. South Park was on the banned cartoons list. And you know what I did? I went right to him. I was like, I'm going to see what I was missing out on all along. So one of the things that I do with my kids, it's a little different, and I respect people who choose to parent differently, is I want to have a conversation about it with them while I'm watching it with them. And say, particularly, I've got a freshman at Nolensville High School, Cam, who's awesome. And being able to talk with him, as he's the oldest, about okay, what do you think? And have those discussions rather than create a taboo. Because I know that it's easy, even for kids who, are great kids that have great values. It matters that those values are theirs and not mine. And I'm not just imposing them on my kids. I need him to understand his faith. I need all my boys to understand that and understand what they value and how it differs from the world. And so that's just a choice that I make. And I don't, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying, hey, this is sort of good for your brain. It's not. But I think that the idea of creating taboos for your kids when they get out of your control, they make a lot of crazy decisions. I want to make sure that you guys message me. So, I probably had 20 of y'all already message me on the Members Nutrition Super Text line, 615-737-9986, and give me your name, where you're from, and what the current state of the union is for you. That's super helpful. I'm going to turn that into a column. I'm going to work on it tonight, and I'll pull in some of those quotes from that text line. So if you want to get in, let me know your name, where you're from, city and state, and what's going on, because that's actually what I care about. And also remember that I've got 800 words, so I'm probably not going to be able to include everybody, but I really appreciate it nevertheless. It really, really matters. Finishing up the State of the Union address, we're to governance and poor leadership, which is a concern. Frankly, I think we would look to Washington to do too much. And as a conservative, I'm actually fine with Washington not doing much. I mean, funding the basic functions of government, fine, but man, that gets dicey fast. You know what I mean? When, the basic function of government is just this boondoggle or this earmark that isn't a thing. But other than that, I think the big thing is to actually focus on governing. Say, okay, what do we want? How do we serve, particularly based on Congress's enumerated powers first, and then figure out the rest. But on education policy, roll that bad boy to the states. Let the states do more. Block grant it and say, hey, we're going to get out of federal education policy. We're going to roll it to the states. I think that's the great thing about the Dobbs decision on abortion. I know some of you guys are saying, well, we need a national policy, a national abortion ban. Look, that's a political messaging bill. The votes are not there for that. And again, it's kind of like federal drug policy on cannabis. What does it look like when states just kind of ignore federal law? I mean, I think that's ultimately what would happen on that type of thing. Again, roll it to the states. Give them more power, and then you don't worry as much about bad leadership in Washington because you got leadership in the state that's closer to you. It's always better for Governor Bill Lee and Jack Johnson and Cameron Sexton, William Lamberth, the folks that represent us locally, to be the ones that we engage. Because you know what? I can go find those guys. I can talk to them. I can work with them because they're right here. I'm not saying that Andy Ogles and Mark Green and Senator Blackburn aren't accessible, but they're back and forth. Their day job is not in Tennessee. It's in Washington, D.C. And so they're hearing a lot more from lobbyists and other folks like that than they are everyday Tennesseans. That's just a fact. And so to roll the responsibility back to the states, I think is something that really matters. That addresses that concern. Trust me, Joe Biden is not going to say that. That ain't happening. Chris Hand did a great job on his show of talking about the national defense terrorism situation. What do you say to that? President Biden's going to first have to say the border security. It's not. And then he's going to have to say, and don't worry, we've got everything under control. Nobody actually believes that. And so again, I just, it pains me to say it, but if I'm advising President Trump, it's to make, or if I'm advising President Biden on his State of the Union, it needs to be his campaign strategy. It needs to be this existential, we want to be good people type thing. We want to, like, again, push it towards the referendum on Trump and not on your track record. The moment you start going down these issues and trying to make your case, it's just a tough one. Sure, I mean, folks in deep blue states are going to roll with you, but I don't see other folks rolling with you. The people that Biden needs to win are like, I don't know, man. Like, it was easy when you didn't really have a presidential track record. Now you do. And on the economy and immigration, it's not great. Oh, well, what about foreign policy? Ukraine, Israel, it seems like everything's going awesome, right? No, I don't care what you think about those issues. I don't think anybody is saying it's going great. The folks who believe that we should support Ukraine and that's in our national best interest are like, this mealy-mouthed policy without any direction whatsoever is a bad idea. I'm in that vein. The Republicans who are like, no, like, we should not do this. We have so many other issues. Why would we spend on Ukraine? It's not going well for them. Israel. I mean, what's going on, man? What's our posture? What's success look like? How are we succeeding? How are we supporting Israel? What are we doing? Again, okay. Oh, and have you noticed that Russia and China, not our friends? They're just not. They don't share our values. They're engaging in malign activities, messing with us all the time. We just have a new member of NATO in Sweden. We're going to talk about that tonight. And okay, what's the game plan? What's the leadership? I'm out of issues. We've gone down the list. Where is it that he gets a win? I suspect where we're going to go is just kind of gloss over some of that. You know, try to browbeat Republicans on Ukraine, and then we'll go straight to abortion. That's where he wants to go. He wants to talk about that because Biden thinks that this is going to be a differentiator in those swing states. I just don't see it. Most people daily are not faced with an abortion decision. Those are heavy decisions. Republicans can engage in some overreach here. I think based on Justice Kavanaugh saying, hey, you can't extend your state reach beyond your borders in the Dobbs decision in terms of criminal prosecutions. And you got states like Alabama that are trying to do that, essentially prosecute people for leaving the state to go get an abortion in another state. That's got some Sixth Amendment problems, all kinds of other stuff. And again, trying to federalize the issue. Republicans that are like, well, we want an abortion ban at X number of weeks. One, not everybody on the Republican side is in agreement as to what that would look like. And two, that's the kind of thing that Democrats use to leverage this issue up and be like, see, Republicans want to tell you what to do from a national level, and so we have to tell you what to do from a national level, and therefore this needs to drive your vote. I don't think it does, but what else are you going to talk about? What else is Joe Biden going to jump up there and cheerlead about and say, we are winning on this issue, we are crushing it, and Republicans aren't? Because the things that drive Democrats out right now are basically not, I mean, essentially being afraid of Trump and thinking he's going to end the country. That's where they've gotten. That's where they are. And like him or not, I don't think that we're there. I think that's insane. But nevertheless, you got a State of the Union. Biden called for it, said, "This is I want to talk about it," and I think that that's where he's going to go. if you start to hear about climate change and environmental stuff, we are so far down the list from what Americans really care about as to be absurd. And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't have good environmental policy. I think that is absolutely mission critical. Some of y'all ask why, what are some of my concerns about RFK Jr.'s policy? It's precisely these issues. He would put teeth in the EPA more than are already there and really use the heavy hand of government on these issues. I think environmental policy must be a partnership. It must be working in concert with economic interest because that creates sustainability. And, you know, that to me is an area that Republicans are deficient in. We got to be better conservationists. The hook and bullet conservative can do really, really well in terms of environmental policy. But again, it's so far down the list. And if we get into the, you know, transgender stuff and the identity politics, it's just a concession by Biden that on the top issues where they rank, he doesn't have an answer. And so he wants to focus on the parochial interests of his base, which he thinks will give him the day. I'm telling you, as a conservative Republican, we should not let him play that game. He should have to answer on the economy. He should have to answer on immigration. He should explain those things and what he's doing. And on foreign policy, I think we should hold him to account in those areas and say, what are you doing? What's the plan? Trump should, you know, have him hooked on a treadmill trying to explain that stuff. And if we can't do that, then we're creating a distraction. We're creating opportunity for Joe Biden. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. Matt Murphy's almost here, y'all. This is Super Talk 99.7. Oh, man. Closing time. Such a great bumper. And look what I found. It's not Brian Wilson. It's the Matt Murphy.
This is weird.
I know, man.
This is odd. Normally, I'm you.
And you're me.
And, well, normally, I'm you, and then I would also be Brian. I'm now Brian. I know. It's all weird.
It is strange.
I feel like Joe Biden talking to Morgan Freeman and Gina Davis about how to be a better president of the United States, which is a video that I watched this morning.
It's a rather common feeling. I think it's a movie. It's not yet, actually. What's the deal on the Brian Wilson show hosted by Matt Murphy?
I will be discussing the State of the Union tonight. I have a question for all of the doctors in the House. Is there a doctor in the House? I'm going to need you in the 3 o'clock hour. So I beg of you, if you are a medical professional, I have a sincere question to ask you about Joe Biden tonight.
Good.
So please stay tuned for that.
If you're not staying tuned for this question, he told me what the question is. I'm not gonna burn it for him.
Is it a good question?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
And we actually need some MDs to jump in.
No. I want a medical doctor to answer the question. Plus, John Rose coming up at the 4 o'clock hour, and who else? Scott Spicky in the 4 o'clock hour.
It's been fun, folks. I'm not Matt Murphy. I'm Cameron Smith, and you are listening to Super Talk 99.7. Stay tuned.
Get off my show.